guys, it's ASBYT and welcome back to a brand new video. Now on the table we have a product which has been causing a pretty big stir in the tech community amongst the budget smartphone lovers. This right here is a Umidigi Z2. I'll also be talking a little bit about the Z2 Pro. Let's get straight to it. So we have here on the table the Umidigi Z2. Now I don't actually need my unboxing knife unfortunately for this one, so I'm going to put that to one side because it doesn't have any cellophane and it's pretty easy to open. Now I would like to point out quickly this device was actually sent to me by Umidigi in order to test and show you guys, and a massive thanks to them. However, if you've been following the channel you will know that won't sway my opinion. I will always give the good points and the bad points so that it's a rounded opinion that you guys can take away and then go and make your own decisions on. But now one thing about Umidigi to notice in the packaging department is they always add a fairly strange additional layer. For me it doesn't really do a great deal, but let me know in the comment section below what you think about the packaging of products and whether you think it changes your opinion on the product in general. Right, so on the back, we're going to look at some of the specs that are on here and then we can get them out of the way. So the CPU is a Helio P23 MediaTek 6763. It's running Android 8.1 straight from the box. So the latest stock Android at this moment in time. It's got 6GB of RAM, 64GB of storage, 2 nano SIM cards or 1 nano SIM card and 1 TF card. So it does have expandable storage and I believe it's up to 256GB, which is again a good thing for a lot of people. 3850 mAh battery, again that's a pretty decent spec. 2246 by 1080p LCD IPS display. For those AMOLED lovers, you're not going to get that here, but there are advantages to having an LCD display. There's no danger of burning, etc. and things like that. We've got quad cameras on here, so we've got a dual rear Samsung sensor camera, 16 megapixel and 8 megapixel, both with f2.0 aperture. And we've got the same on the front as well. So they are the main specs. Now we're going to open it up because I'm sure a lot of you guys will be interested in this design, which resembles a couple of other flagships that are around at the moment. So first thing to note here, we have a little card that says giveaway, enter to win, so you can win a phone, I'm guessing. And then on the back it says thanks. So it says building a great phone is hard enough, so building a great phone on a budget should be infinitely more difficult. Big thanks to all those who made this super phone super awesome. There's a lot of supers. Superman. No? Thanks to your support, our value can be realized and we can constantly move forward to create smart devices with better user experience. So that is a nice little touch. Now we're going to spin it around because actually the phone is here and we're going to just pull that off. And we're going to also, it's actually got a case on it, which I'm just going to remove. So it does come with a case, which is nice to see. It's like a silicone rubber case, but it's black, matte. And then we've got one more. Let's see what else is in here. So it says link to the world, Umidigi on there, and we've got a manual in there and a SIM card ejector there as well, and it's in quite a nice little envelope. And again, we were talking about design, packaging, etc., and that's another nice little touch. It gives it that sort of premium vibe. And then we've got a charging brick and our USB Type-C cable, and it is fast charging as well. That's what's in the box. Now we're going to look at this beautiful little phone. Now before we jump into it, as always, I will leave the link to this in the video description below if you want to go through and get more information or indeed purchase it after watching this video. I've got one of the best prices around at the moment, so feel free to go and check that out. Right, so before we show you the front, I'm going to show you the back because this is a big selling point. It is a big attraction of this phone. Very similar to the Huawei P20, for example. It has kind of a color shift on the actual phone. Now this version is actually called Twilight, and as you can see there's about 4 different colors depending on where the light actually hits it. And it varies from purple to blue to green. Now, it's not quite the level of the Huawei P20, and even on the Honor 10 as well, that has that sort of shifting color as well. These colors are kind of fairly fixed in place. I mean, they do still shift a little bit, but just not quite as much as those two phones. But then again, the difference between this and the Huawei P20, for example, is that this costs around £200. Whereas obviously, if you've been following the news on the Huawei P20 over the last couple of months, you will know that that phone, for example, is a lot more expensive. So now we're going to jump to the front, and now you're obviously going to notice that it resembles another product or another few products that are on the market at this moment in time. The iPhone 10, again the Huawei phones, the Xiaomi Mi 8 for example. Now the notch on here is probably about the same size as the one on the Xiaomi Mi 8 as opposed to the One Plus and the Huawei ones, which are smaller. But again, for the price, £200, we've got a very small bottom bezel, very small side bezels as well. And all in all, I'm struggling not to be impressed when I know the price of it. Now, as I said before, it is running stock Android and it's a very nice experience. The Helio P23 does a decent job, and actually, after playing around with this for a few minutes, I can tell straight away it is a very snappy phone, again, when you consider the price. And to back that up, I have just quickly run a benchmark test on this using Antutu and Geekbench, and I'll show you the results right now. So the Antutu score is 83,237, which again, considering the price, is pretty impressive. And I also run a Geekbench score earlier as well, with a single core score of 787 and a multi-core score of 3,709. And I'm not really getting any stuttering, any lags at this moment in time. It's not quite as snappy, obviously, as some of those top-end Snapdragon chipsets, but I wouldn't expect that. But is it going to be a slug when you're trying to do everything? Absolutely not. Now, one of the things I mentioned at the start was that this does, of course, come in a Pro version as well, and the main difference is this has 64 gigabytes of storage. The Pro one comes with 128 gigabytes of storage, but the chipset on that one is a Helio P60, whereas this one is the Helio P23. So you are going to get that bump up in performance, but it's going to cost you an extra £100. So that's going to retail for about $300. I'm going to leave both listed below so you can go through and check that out. But for that sort of price, you can also get the Asus Zenfone 5, for example, which is roughly around that sort of price. I reviewed that here, and that is a very, very popular phone around that sort of $350 price range as well. Then you jump up an extra 50, and you've got things like the Honor 10. Again, I've reviewed that here, where you can go through and check that out. So everything you know and love from a stock Android phone. So you've got your app drawer, you've of course got your different windows, you've got your navigation bar at the bottom, so you've got your recent apps on here, you've also got your go home, and you've got your back button there. Now, one thing that it doesn't appear to have is gestures, and that is something that is coming in more and more with smartphones, and that is something that I would like to see Umidigi do going forwards, and all different manufacturers as well, because I definitely feel that that is an area where smartphones are going, because it is just far easier, and of course you get more real estate. You don't have to have visible buttons on the bottom, or indeed actual buttons in a bottom bezel. It is just the way the smartphone world is going. So we're going to test the fingerprint sensor now. So it is pretty accurate. It's not the quickest. It's probably a delay of about a second longer than I would personally want on a smartphone, but then I'm used to the likes of Xiaomi, OnePlus, Huawei, which are all smartphones that are 400 plus. This is 200. So, I mean, it is pretty accurate. I'm not getting, like that time, for example, it didn't work, but on the whole, it does actually work the majority of the time. It does also have Face ID here, which you can enroll face. So I'm going to start the enroll. And it's going to be a 2D face scan. You know, it's not going to be the most secure, but if you want to use Face ID, you can on here. It also has some different options under Face ID. So it has enable face recognition when screen is lit, which is ticked on. Unlock screen, enable face recognition when sliding up. Then it's got activate screen fill light in dark environments. Enabling this feature will increase battery consumption and vibration alert as well. Now, I'm just going to test it. Okay, so it worked pretty well that time. Let's do it again. It's opened. It didn't open. It opened, but took a bit of a delay. So you're getting an idea of the sort of Face ID we're getting on this. Not a great one, not something I would personally use. I would go with the fingerprint sensor, which seems to be better. Again, although a bit of a delay on the fingerprint sensor, £200. It's very, very comfortable in the hand. Now, the design language on the back, it's curved across the back and it's narrow enough to fit really nicely in the palm. So I'm comparing this as an example to the LFO New Pro, which has that same sort of form factor feel. Also, a lot of smartphones in and around this price range, the budget end of the market, they are made up of components that are cheap to make. They're made of a lot of plastics. I'm not sure whether it is indeed plastic or not. Because it feels quite light, I'm gonna air on the side of that, but it does look in the hand like metal and glass. So it's very deceptive if it is plastic. And again, I'm not too sure, but it certainly feels very premium and lightweight, not bulky and heavy in the hand. Now, the buttons, in my opinion, could be a little bit better. They don't feel quite as firm when you click on them as some other products. They feel a little bit wobbly, bit loose in my personal opinion. In fact, you can even hear a slight rattle. And actually the buttons in there fine, it's not going to fall out or anything. It's literally just that the gap for the button is slightly larger than the actual button, so it allows for a little bit of movement. It's not quite as firm in there as I would like. Would this be a deal breaker for me personally? Not really, but again, I have to share that with you. While we're there, we have the volume rocker up and down there and the power switch on the right. On the left hand side, we've got a SIM card tray there. On the bottom, we've got speaker grills and our Type-C charge there. I'm going to do a quick speaker test for you. So I'm going to go onto YouTube now, and I'm just going to play one of my latest videos on there, and I'm going to turn the speaker up.
Hi guys, it's ASBYT and welcome back to a brand new video. And on the table,
And this is at top volume, so I'm going to just lift this to the microphone as well.
Looking product on paper. Let's see when we unbox it how it stacks up. It is, of course, the Xiaomi Mi Pad.
So it's quite sharp at the top level. It's fairly in keeping with a lot of smartphones right across the board. I think smartphone manufacturers could improve, even the top flagship devices could improve the speakers in their smartphones for sure. And generally all of them would benefit from dual speakers. Now this one doesn't have a dual speaker, and again, that's something that I think smartphone manufacturers will start to do a lot more. I know there are a few already, but definitely in the next few years we will see pretty much all smartphones, in my opinion, come with a dual stereo speaker setup. So now I'm going to quickly jump onto the camera, and there's not too much in terms of options. You've got picture or video. There's no portrait mode, for example. You've got flash on and off, HDR on or off as well, and you've got your rotate for your front-facing selfie. You've also got a few filters on here, but it does have that rear dual camera, so although it doesn't give you that portrait option, it'll probably just do it anyway. We'll just test that. Right, so the colors seem a little bit overexposed. I'm just going to try something with a bit of color. It's a nice amount of color on that, so we'll try that just to see how it deals with saturation, etc. Right, so it's fairly hit and miss. As you can see, there's two different varieties of the same photo which I just took. One of them is a bit dark, where it's adjusted the exposure and it's gone a little bit heavy, making it darker because of the white table. Whereas on the second one, it looks nice and fresh and bright, but slightly overexposed on some of the white areas. The middle focus of the picture is quite nice in clarity and contrast and saturation. It's a mixed bag, and again, that's what I expect. Generally with these sort of phones, the camera is an area where you do tell the difference between some of those top flagship devices and these. But then, as I always say, if you want an amazing camera on a smartphone, unfortunately you have to pay that top premium price. It's certainly not horrid, and you're going to be able to take some quite nice photos with it. It's just not the best. Now I'm going to go to the front-facing selfie shooter, of course, as we always do at some point during a video. And I'm going to take a nice little shot here. And yeah, you do get subtle bits of blur in the background. It's not quite as aggressive as some of the software blurring of the backgrounds that you'll get on a lot of the phones at this moment in time. So actually it looks quite lifelike, quite natural. I mean, it's depicting my sunburnt face, so it must be doing something right. I'm pretty impressed with that selfie camera, I'm not gonna lie. It's done a really good job there. It also appears to be slightly wide angle as well, which is one thing I do quite like, especially from front-facing cameras. If you've got a group shot, for example, don't quote me on that, but it's definitely slightly fisheyed, and again, for group photos, this is gonna be pretty good. I have just had that message pop up as I've tried to jump onto the video, and while we're on that subject, I have noticed since I've been looking at this phone, there have been a couple of glitches here and there, so it is definitely something I think you should know, that it's not gonna run completely flawlessly. There are gonna be glitches here and there. There may be a few crashes here and there, but again, every phone I've seen in this price range, I've had that experience with. I mean, even top flagship phones, none of them are perfect. You will always get glitches and crashes here and there and software issues, but yeah. Again, just something you should know. So video recording is up to 1080p, so you can get full HD video, and it's fairly standard for what you would expect. I'm not obviously going into a lot of detail. I can do. Let me know in the comment section below if you want to see some photo examples, etc. from this on my Instagram channel, which I am starting to do more and more, so you guys can get a more in-depth idea of the camera and video capabilities if I'm only doing sort of unboxings and quick reviews. Fingerprint magnet, absolutely. So that is pretty much it. This is where you guys come in. Let me know what you think about the Umidigi Z2. What parts of it do you like? Do you like the design, i.e. the twilight sort of color shift? Do you like the front design due to the fact that it's got fairly limited bezels other than the notch, which I didn't even mention. I'm so used to seeing them nowadays. Until that next generation of phone comes out, the notch is going to be ever present unless you want to buy a pop-up camera phone, which by their very nature will divide opinion. Also, let me know what you don't like about this phone and what you would like to see Umidigi do to possibly improve a device going forwards. As always, guys, it really helps if you did enjoy this video and found it helpful. Drop a like below, and of course, if you are new to the channel, welcome, and subscribe and hit that little notification bell so that whenever I do post a video, whether it be on smartphones or tech in general, pretty much daily content here. I love you and leave you. I'll see you in the next one. ASBYT. Peace out.